Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Sarah Smith, and you're listening to Raw Intentions. God, I didn't even mean to do this. I didn't even plan this, but I have been absolutely enlightened the last few days. These guests that we've had on have just given me like a whole new lease on life, spiritual awakening. I have some serious homework after this guest. You guys are going to absolutely love him. Before we dive into this week's episode, though, just in case this is your first time listening, I'll give you my little elevator pitch just so you know who I am and what I'm about. So, like I said in the intro, my name is Sarah Smith, Sarah with an H, Smith with AY. I'm 30 years old, currently living in Breckenridge, Colorado, from Madison, Alabama, and podcasting in Denver, Colorado. So I'm all over the place. I went to Auburn University, graduated in 2017, was studying bilingual occupational therapy. So very different than the realm I found myself in now. And it all happened totally on accident. I was incredibly broke, was waitressing, just not paying the bills, the non-existent bills that I had at the time. And so I started making handmade jewelry for myself, for my friends, just out of my college apartment. And what started kind of by accident my senior year in 2016 has snowballed and turned into something bigger than I could have ever dreamed. So it's called Raw and Rebellious. It's at raw_rebellious on Instagram. It was just a little side hustle before I started grad school. Then I never went to grad school and it turned into my full-time career. We started with necklaces, bracelets, earrings, all kinds of things. And in the last year or so, we've made a switch and don't do jewelry at all anymore. We do apparel, we do hats, prints, custom apparel, merch. I have my podcast. We do meetups. We do hosted trips, pop-up events with my apparel. I have a YouTube channel, a blog, as well as doing influencing on the side for my personal account. So I wear many hats and go all over the place. And the reason for this podcast and the culmination, going on 3 years now, which is insane, is my favorite part of my brand is for sure the community. I think that's what sets us apart from other businesses and what's caused us to grow and be so sustainable over the years. And I wanted a lifeline to that community. I wanted to be able to have real, raw, intentional conversations with y'all, the listeners, as well as create connection with other people in my life. And of course, I love to hear myself talk, hence me doing solo episodes, me having a podcast in the first place. But yeah, it's been an amazing journey. And I feel like I've gotten to learn so much. I've gotten to grow my own circle so much. And yeah, it's been incredibly enlightening. So that brings us to our very special guest this week. We've got Kunj Shah. We have a mutual friend that connected us, and he lives in Denver. He is huge in the music industry, has a really incredible story. He founded Live for Live Music. He is a newly crowned meditation coach. I think he's actually headed to teach his first meditation course tonight, literally as we speak. And he's had this whole spiritual journey, sobriety. He's huge, not only within music, and has made total waves in that industry. He's created his own events, his own festivals, and the list goes on, and he continues to do so on top of also having the spiritual awakening that we get into. He's a new father. Maybe by the time this episode comes out, he now is the father of 2, because currently he has 1 son and 1 on the way. But this episode was incredible. Definitely have your notepads ready. You're going to want to take some notes on this. Follow him on all the things. You're going to want to take his course too, which I'm fairly certain there's a wait list on. I'm like, I need to get on that wait list as well. We talk about all the things. Y'all are going to love it. So without further ado, let's welcome Kunj Shah to Raw Intentions podcast. But I know you're very much into your spirituality, and I know it's also been a journey for you. So before we get into that, I would love to take a step back, and maybe you could introduce yourself to my audience and yours, and tell us a little about your background and how we got here.
Yeah, my name is Kunj Shah. Most people know me through a company that I founded about 12, 13 years ago called Live for Live Music. Mm-hmm. Started off as a blog. We actually didn't even have a website. We were... Back then, they had Facebook Notes, and we were writing reviews for concerts on Facebook Notes. I remember I got a point and shoot, and I would take 1,000 photos. 2 of them would be usable, and we started posting reviews. I had a friend who started working on a website, created a website, started to realize... Created
it from scratch?
From scratch, yeah. I had to learn how to code, not the website itself, but when... somebody gave me a concert review, or if I wrote a concert review, I had to learn how to code it in HTML.
Jeez.
It was a different time.
Before Squarespace and all the things you just plug and play.
WordPress, and now WordPress, I'm oh my God, this makes it so much easier. I mean, though I just built my meditation website on WordPress, and I hit up my editor. I'm like, hey man, this stuff is really hard.
Yeah.
So Sorry if I gave you a lot of crap before.
Yeah. That's incredible. So, and you said so how's this idea born? Because this is like a massive company.
Yeah, I had two friends and at the time, we wanted to keep going to shows. We were living in Brooklyn. We had spent a year prior going on tour with the band Phish.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of shows. And then we moved to...
How many shows have you been to?
Oh, it's like over 200 now.
Oh my God.
It's been a lot.
And are you still going?
I'm going on like the first night and the last night of a local run.
Okay.
And then I'll try to go to some special shows here and there.
Fun.
I went to Mexico and stuff. But
cool.
The multiple consecutive nights is a little bit harder for me.
Yeah.
But in 2011, we went to every single show that Phish played that year. So it was 39 shows, like 20 plus states. It was really...
That's a blast.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
It was really wild. And yeah, so I was in my early 20s and I was like, I want to do this. How do I get in? And the traditional music industry roles just did not seem accessible to me.
Okay.
And I didn't see a path for making that happen. So we were like thinking of different routes. And one of them was, okay, like blogs are just starting to become this thing. Yeah. So we started a music blog and the website came along. Then all of a sudden, like other people caught wind. We were pretty social because we went to so many concerts. Other people came along. They're like, oh, I want to be part of this. I take photos or I write reviews. Like that sounds awesome. And it was just like a bunch of kids in their 20s.
Yeah. That you knew from concerts.
Yeah. They're like, I want to do this. So people would contribute. And then we didn't realize that these publicists, they wanted us there. It wasn't like I used to be so scared writing these like requests for like, oh my God, I hope they like say yes for this request for us to cover their concert. And it's like free promo for them. Yeah. It's building their bands. That's what they're getting paid for is that coverage. So even in the beginning stages, I think there were a lot of publicists who kind of helped us. I had a friend named Destiny who would like, she did a lot of jam music PR and she would, it's like, this kid's a little crazy, but let's get him in here. We're gonna why not? Let's do it. Whatever. Yeah. What's one more? And like slowly it just started to get bigger and bigger. And at the time, and I know you have an online business and the algorithm back then showed 100% of your followers, 100% of your content. Yeah. So our now competitors at the time didn't even have Facebook pages or whatever. So we were like blowing up a lot faster than we could keep up. Wow. And I still feel like that sometimes. Yeah. So it's like, it just started to grow and grow and grow. And then we started to do like marketing for a small local festival that was like, it was called Equifunk. It was a funk festival at a summer camp on like the East Coast. Wow. And they were like
around New York? Or?
Yeah, around New York. Okay. They asked us to like help them market. And then like we had like a price point and then like realized that this is like a serious asset that we have. Our email list, our socials, our articles, our website, our banner ads, stuff like that. And so then we started getting like hit up by like the Live Nations of the world. And wow. It started to like just get bigger and bigger. And now we do like a ton of marketing for like hundreds and hundreds of independent promoters, venues, and festivals across the country.
So, and is that your main form?
It's one of our main revenue streams. Okay. We have like ads on the website. It's a music news website, so people can go to our website and they'll see like what's the newest thing that happened today.
Updates
and we have a newsletter that we're really proud of. It's called the Daily Dose, and that goes out every single day.
Every day.
Every work day.
Okay, still though. Yeah. That's super impressive.
So there's like 4, 5, 6 articles on there. Okay. We have this thing called microdoses on there, which is like 5 things on the top of our Daily Dose newsletter that are like fun little videos that we've seen on the internet of like just cool little happenings. And then we have the long form articles in there. So we have a newsletter business as well. And then we do some of our own shows and events. So I just spent like the last call that I was on when I was walking on here, we were working on like 17 shows down in New Orleans for Jazz Fest. We do a lot of the late night shows there. Okay. So the New Orleans Jazz Festival ends at 7 p.m. And then we take over this venue called the Toulouse Theater. We do stuff at this place called the Joy Theater, Mahalia Jackson Theater. And we do 2 shows each night. So it's like there's a 9-10 p.m. show, and then there's a 2 a.m. show.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, so that's like 10 days or 12, 13, 14 days a year. That probably takes 14 years off my life.
Yeah, I'm sure. And are you there at the shows?
I'm at the shows.
Wow.
Last year we went with my son, who was like one at a time. He actually went when he was 2 months old too. So he was bouncing around the actual Jazz Fest. So he's been there twice, and he's not even 2 yet.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so he's a veteran. And me and my wife got married in New Orleans. We love it down there. It's just such a beautiful, amazing place. So we do put on some of our own shows and events. So we have a festival that's actually like the Tuesday and Wednesday between the 2 weekends of Jazz Fest called Days Between Festival.
And
it's for the people who like come to town for both weekends. And really just for people who are like big fans of the music. So we do that. And then we have like 24 late night shows, and that's a little bit hard.
Yeah. I'm sure.
On the mind and the body and the prep work before. But it's something that we love to do.
Yeah.
And so we do it. I feel like all throughout my early career, it was just like, well, I want to do that. So like, let me just do it.
Like, how do I just do it?
It wasn't like, and like, listen, there are times when it should have been probably a little bit more buttoned up.
Yeah.
But I think there was also something to, okay, let's just get the point and shoot camera, and like, I'll take the photos. And let's just do it and put it out there. I feel like hesitation is what causes like the biggest obstacle to people's like actually fulfilling their purpose in life.
Yeah. And just living in that alignment. And I mean, through this podcast, like I said, I've had so many incredible conversations, and it's funny because one thread between so many entrepreneurs and people that own their own companies is when I ask advice, just do it.
Yeah.
You just have to start. And that's something that I did early on, was like, I would say yes to things. And then I would turn around after the conversation and be like, how the hell do I do this? Like, I have no clue how to get this done, but I would say yes. And then that would force me to grow. And everyone's just faking it and pretending like they know what they're doing, even though they don't. And that's just what you got to do. So that's really cool.
I don't even know if it's faking it. It's just like, just do it. Like, and don't worry too much about how it's done, how you're going to look. Am I worthy of this thing?
How
I feel
to be
like
perceived.
We're always just like filled with self-doubt. And yes, you are. Everyone is worthy of any experience that they want to have.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I also just love how you capitalized on something so early on, like from the Facebook notes and Facebook. This is before like influencers. This is before social media marketing. I mean, which is now totally exploded on the market. So you were kind of doing that without even realizing it, and you just noticed a gap, or you noticed people asking for a specific thing, it sounds like. And so you guys just jumped into it.
Yeah, it worked for us. It really did. It just like, I feel like some of it was right place, right time. But I feel like it was just, I think mostly it was just a lack of hesitation. Just like, do it.
Sure.
Doesn't matter how you're perceived. Doesn't matter if it's like, like it's the internet. It was still the internet.
Yeah.
So you still get like
you're still getting perceived.
And you're still getting those comments and like, oh my God, you misspelled this letter. And there's so many times where you're reading the comments and you're just like, oh my God, I just want to give up on this thing. These people think I'm an idiot. Or like, oh no, like they're just tearing apart this article. Or then you get a call from a publicist who's angry about this, or a manager is not happy that you did this. But at the end of the day, so many of them are much happier that you're in the space exposing what they're doing than, if you get a small little thing wrong. And now our team is like really extraordinary, and they are hyper focused on getting things completely accurate, but it's like, it's not easy.
Well, it took you a second to get there, which is fine. And with the music, you said at the beginning when you were going to all these Phish shows and you were just looking around and you're like, I want to get into this. When you said like, I want to get into this, did you mean you wanted to somehow create a career out of something that you love? Did you mean you just wanted to be a part of the music industry in an integral way?
I don't know. I just saw like the music scene that we were part of was like these people, the people that go see the type of music that we like, it's their life.
Totally.
It's like they're seeing, 3-4 shows, especially back then, post-COVID, it's been a little bit different, but they were seeing like 3-4 shows a week.
Right.
It was people were all in. And I just loved it. I hated going to bars. I loved going to concerts. I just felt like that was how I wanted to spend my free time. And I don't know if I was like thinking proactively, like, oh, this is how we're going to make a career. And this is what the business is going to be like. we just were like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to do it right now.
Yeah.
And this is going to be really fun. And we're going to see where this goes.
Yeah.
And we're not really going to think twice about it. We're just going to do it.
Right. Well, and I feel like when you're young, I mean, when I was in my early 20s, it's when I started too. And like the ignorance is bliss. Like you have no clue what was going to happen. If someone told you everything that was going to happen, like for me, I'm like, I don't know if I would have done it. But when you don't know anything, you're like, I'll just try this and see what happens, which I think is the best time to do it too. That's incredible. And it's so cool what you've built. I mean, starting from just writing blogs to now you're creating your own music events, which is probably a pipe dream. And so you have your festivals, you have your newsletters, and you said you have a team. How have you scaled your company from where it started?
We're about, we have 3 people on the editorial team. We have a partner on our newsletter. We have a sales consultant, a sales team under her as well. So we're like 10 people right now.
Cool.
My wife's the marketing director.
Oh, amazing.
Of the company. So that's great as well.
And how did you guys meet? Through music or?
That festival I was talking about, the one that was like a funk festival at a summer camp.
Yeah.
I actually remember, like, I think I gave her a ride home from that event. Still just friends. And then we ended up moving to Brooklyn at the same time. Still just friends. I ended up going to New Orleans. Phish was playing New Orleans Jazz Fest. And I had not been to New Orleans before. And she went to Tulane. So she was pretty familiar with New Orleans. And her parents were down there with her as well. I had all these plans. I was going to hang out with like a million different people, see a bunch of long lost friends. I met up with her, but no one was like really hanging out yet, like Thursday morning or something, or Friday morning. So I met up with her and her dad and her mom. I walked into the room and it just felt like home right away. And I was actually calling her mom and dad, and that weekend. And I remember my parents at some point saw like social media posts and like, who are these people he's calling mom and dad? Like really, it was just like confused. But I had all these plans and I just ended up hanging out with her and her parents the whole weekend. And something kind of clicked there. Some woman on one of those streetcars was like, she said, oh, you guys just make the most beautiful couple. You guys have such great energy. And we're just both like, no, I don't know what you're talking about.
We're just friends.
And her mom was like, well, my daughter's not good enough for you. And
she was in there too.
And so lo and behold, I had to prove her wrong. And now we're married 5-6 years.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah. So she didn't work with me in the beginning. So that summer after that, we started going to,
because at that point you had the blog already.
Yeah, I did. And actually at that festival, she was interviewing these artists and we actually met in the gym at the summer camp. Because I was interviewing these artists, Marco Benevento and Joe Russo, and she was interviewing them for like a different outlet called Sensible Reason.
Okay.
And it was
she a writer as well?
She was at the time.
Okay.
And she was like, it was just a funny scene. They're like in there, like pumping iron. They were just being hilarious. We were just like in between starstruck and like really like fun. Like this is funny. We're in the mix here. And it was just like a really funny, cool experience. And like, so we just kept having those like little experiences together. And then, we started going to different music festivals together, Bonnaroo and Electric Forest and stuff like that. And that's when like sparks flew and we started dating. And it was, and then eventually I'm like, I'd be working on Live for Live music stuff. And then I'd be like, oh man, like I got to send a marketing email. Like, I don't know how to send a marketing email or whatever. And she's like, I got this. And like, she'd be in like the driver's seat and she would like help me with like stuff that I needed help on. And then eventually we were just like, okay, like it just makes sense. She was working for another PR company at the time.
Okay.
And she was just like, it just makes sense that I help you with this here. And she ended up building the company with me. And really, she built the most important part of the company, which is the part that makes money.
Totally, yeah, the ads and the marketing and all that.
So she really helped us hone that in.
Okay.
And yeah, we've been doing this together for like 10 years.
Wow.
The company started about 13 years ago, so she came in about 3 years in, and she's been there for like almost 10 years now.
That's beautiful. How is that working together and being married?
It's better now, and not that there were parts of it that were just like peak fun. It was a lot of fun in the beginning, but then the parts where you get home and at the time I didn't have like the tools to regulate my nervous system, and I would I wasn't aware of my own capabilities.
Yeah. And
so when things would come up, I felt like I was overwhelmed and I would feel distressed. And so I would be a lot more stressed, on edge. And so like I feel like that sometimes would cause friction. And then you're also working with somebody that you're living in we used to live in New York City at the time.
So it's like a closet.
So we're living in a 1-bedroom apartment there. It was a nice 1-bedroom, but it was still either you're working on the couch or you're working in the bed.
Sure.
So it's like there was like no boundaries. There's no space for a desk. You know, like we can even have like an office desk. That was not always easy, but we made it fun. We made it work. And, you know, over the years, we found a good flow on how to work with each other.
Well, I'm sure it just made you stronger as like partners too. Yeah. You know, I mean, living all that life together and essentially like growing a company together. Yeah. I mean, you can't get much closer than that. So that's special that you got to go through all of that together to get to where you are now. I mean, I'm sure you've gotten a rhythm.
Yeah. And at the time that was also like our recreation. It was like, it was work. And then like the concerts that were like half covering are the things that we wanted to do at night anyway. So we were like, we were doing everything together. It was just like, we'd work all day and then we'd play all night. And then it was just like, it was a lot. But I feel like it was something that was so extraordinarily awesome for being in your 20s.
Totally.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different now, but it's, you know, we have a kid, we have another one on the way, like weeks out. Yeah, it's a different flow now. And I think we have like very different ideas of like work life boundaries now. We barely talk about work when we're not after we like kind of get up off of our desks. You know, I used to be like, I was a dick. I would be like, I'd have like something come up like, oh my God, we need to do this thing. It'd be like 10 p.m. and we're in bed. And like, oh, I need you to help me with this thing. And like all of a sudden we're doing this in the middle of the night.
Right.
And after a while that was not sustainable.
Totally.
And, you know, for either one of us together or just like individually, like now I don't operate like that. I try to, you know, have boundaries and like keep times that are meant for work and times that are meant for health and times that are meant for being a dad, times that are meant for just eating dinner with my family. And so we kind of created more separation over the years. But
I mean, wearing a lot of different hats.
But in our 20s, it was all of it, right? Like, and I feel like you have sometimes the stress and the lows kind of contribute to the highs as well. And I felt like it was just all of it happening, swirling together at one time. And it really made for a really active, really fun 20s.
Well, and living out that dream of from the get, you know, just going to as many concerts as you can go to. It sounds like you did just that.
Yeah. I mean, one time we went on a cruise called Holy Ship. It was like an EDM cruise. And then same company got off that cruise and went on to a thing called Jam Cruise, which is a jam band festival.
Wow.
Totally different crowds. Totally. But I was into everything. And then we came back and I was like, you know, at the time I was partying and I was, you know, I'm totally sober now, but I was like, man, I want to like relax, but I also want to rage. And we ended up like creating this like, and my roommate at the time, his family owned like a spa in Brooklyn. So we ended up making a deep house spa party. And like the pictures are amazing. It's like
you have to send them to me.
Robes in the middle of winter in New York City and like bathing suits and like blow up inflatable whales and just like, you know, DJs blasting in there. You have people like Gary Richards and like a lot of really cool DJs in there. And we would get like whoever was our friend, Mark Martinez subset. He had like this party at the basement at Webster Hall. And it was like the lower floor of Webster Hall every Saturday. So like he or whoever was playing the main room, he'd like get a lot of those DJs to like come and do like an extra set on the Sunday that we were doing this event. And it was just like that whole idea of like, just do the thing, you know?
Totally.
This is such a dumb idea. Like in like if I looked at it now, I'd be like, that is the dumbest thing ever. Like, why would you do that? But it did great. It was a success. It was amazing. We did like many versions of that for a really long time until like the neighbors weren't happy. But, like that was,
we have to stop now.
We had to stop. But like that was just an example of one of the things that you just like do instead of like trying to think about, you know, is this going to work? How are we going to position it? Like, am I the one who's going to do this? There's so many other people that are doing things like this. Like, how could it be me? And then you just kind of talk yourself out of it.
But you do it and then it is you.
Yeah.
So were activations and like little pop-ups like that before you were handling these like massive events? Was that something that you would do often?
Here and there, we would put on different shows. We'd do stuff at the Brooklyn Bowl. We would do stuff in New Orleans.
Okay.
We'd do stuff and then we did like, even the festivals that we did were still like boutique festivals, only a few thousand people. We had one in Florida called Fool's Paradise. And then we did one in Brooklyn, which is like our flagship one, was called Brooklyn Comes Alive.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is like, I'm an independent promoter. I'm not Live Nation. I'm not AEG, and I haven't been here for a really long time. So it's really hard for me and agents to work with me to book their big bands.
Yeah.
They have a relationship with existing venues. They have more money in those venues. A lot of those venues just do their own in-house booking. So how am I going to book shows? So what I would do is I would book like the musicians from this band, the musicians from this band, the musicians from this band, and we'd create these supergroups. And so we'd like book different supergroups and so we have this one event called Brooklyn Comes Alive, and we have Denver Comes Alive coming up here in Denver as well, and that's also supergroups. And what we did was we had 3 venues. I'd been to like New Orleans that one time, and I was like, I want to recreate Frenchman Street in Brooklyn.
Okay.
So we did like a thing where we had 3 venues, like 15, 20 bands, and you get a wristband and you could pop between each venue.
Wow.
And so you'd walk around and you'd pop in, and like we had to program it in a way where like, okay, let's make sure this band is killer, but like not too killer that it's going to take away from this band, because we're selling more tickets than one venue can hold. And you can't have everybody like
wanting to do
one thing. So we had to program it evenly. And I think that's where I thrive, is where booking like not like the headliner acts, but like that mid-tier level, and like figuring out ways to make it work so that like each one of the bands on the lineup is like equally as important.
Yeah, I like that.
And so we have that coming up in Denver, a version of that, kind of closer to the roots of what the old Brooklyn Comes Alive used to be. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we had that. That was one of our more. Yeah, we only did like 2,000 tickets there, but it sold out at 2,000 because you really didn't want to get to a point where people couldn't get into a venue.
Sure. And it worked out well.
And it worked out great. Yeah, we did it for years. Amazing. It was really fun. It was, one of the highlights of my life. And we did a version of that. We did a Denver version. And then when the pandemic hit, we started with a Quarantine Comes Alive. So, and we had like every band in the jam scene on that one. And then we did a Justice Comes Alive, which was like, it was like, the Quarantine Comes Alive one happened. It actually like took place like the day after George Floyd. And we were like, okay, we're done with this for a while. And then we're like, oh God, I feel like there's another need here.
Yeah. So
we did that. And then the election came, and we did like a Democracy Comes Alive. Cool. And then that election went into a runoff. I don't know if you remember,
I remember.
Georgia. And so we did a Georgia Comes Alive. And then the Georgia Comes Alive event was unreal. It's still probably one of the coolest things that I've ever done.
Wow. Where'd you do it in Georgia?
It was all these were virtual. So
because it was during COVID.
After Quarantine Comes Alive, all of those were virtual.
Okay.
And the Georgia event, we ended up getting like Dave Matthews, and all of a sudden, after we had announced, we had gotten the Foo Fighters involved. Wow. And like Diplo did like a 15-minute like EDM set. Yeah, that event drew like some really, really big headlining names on it. It was really cool.
That's incredible. Did you do more events during COVID that were virtual as well?
So those were the 4. We did Quarantine Comes Alive, Justice Comes Alive, Democracy Comes Alive, Georgia Comes Alive. After Georgia, we're like, we're never going to beat this.
Yeah.
And people are starting to get back to not wanting to watch as many webcasts.
Yeah.
So we kind of just like
back then
put it away and, kept it as a thing that we did for like a special time.
Okay.
And like a lot of those events, we ended up raising between all of them like $500,000 for nonprofits.
Wow.
So it was probably one of the coolest, most impactful things that we've done. And I feel like I really that felt like really true to my purpose at the time.
Sure. And getting to put on these events, of course, like fulfills you in that way, but then getting to give back, I'm sure, is also, equally incredible and gives you that purpose. Were there certain nonprofits that you were really passionate about or donating?
Yeah, we did. We did a lot of stuff for Headcount. And our friend Andy Bernstein founded Headcount.
Okay.
My wife actually, her first role in the music industry was a volunteer at Headcount.
Oh, okay.
So we did a lot of stuff like that, and one of the cool things for like the Georgia event, Andy hit me up and we actually created a band with Bob Weir from the Grateful Dead. And we called it the Lame Ducks. And it was like, it was like a little bit of a pun of what was going on in the election at the time. But the event was still nonpartisan. Though Fox News like picked it up and they were talking about it and like talked about it as if it was a partisan event and called us communists and stuff like that. But it was a totally nonpartisan event. It was just to increase virtual turnout.
Yeah.
But like Bob Weir and Dave Schools from Widespread Panic and a few other players, Jay Lane, Jeff C. It was just a really cool thing that I got to create a band with members of the Grateful Dead.
That's insane.
And Phil Lesh, him and his son and my friend Ross James had a band together called the Terrapin Family Band. And they also sent us like content to use for the virtual events too.
Really?
So it's like, I'm like 16-year-old, 17-year-old me is flying to like San Francisco to see Phil Lesh. Is like, this is a dream come true.
Yeah.
And even though it wasn't in person, it was a very special thing for me, I think. And it really was really cool to have been able to put that stamp on what was going on in the music scene at the time. Like, I felt like that was a really big moment for us.
Yeah, and just making such a difference.
Yeah.
And would you say community is pretty important to you?
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like you like bringing people together.
Yeah, and I think the music, then it's kind of like, I feel like one of the most important things that we do is, there's so much stuff going on in the world today. There's just so much negativity. There's just so much anger. There's just
division.
Everyone's just so excited like all the time. The consciousness of the collective is just like in this angry, excited state. And to be able to go somewhere where it's just for enjoyment, for fun, for community, it's really been amazing. I mean, and we have so many friends all over the country that we met through concerts and shows and the industry. And it feels like community is like, it feels like the music scene that we're in, the improvisational music scene, is built around the community and the people who go and see the shows.
Well, and it sounds like similar, like what I was saying earlier, one thing I love about having a podcast is cultivating my own community and getting connected with so many incredible people and learning from them. Sounds like your company has kind of done the same for you.
Yeah, for sure.
You've gotten to cultivate your own personal community through people that you already admired or people that you've learned so much from. Yeah. Which is pretty beautiful.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that I've looked up to over my life, or like musicians that I would, go to see in high school that are like good friends, texting all the time now. With. And just like, it's very funny how that shifts. Like, and it's just, it's been really cool.
And do you feel like there's a shift too and maybe you never felt this way of, do I belong in this room? Am I worthy of interviewing this person, of writing this article, to like feeling that worthiness of being in the same bubble and room as these people?
Yes. And I think everybody feels that in the beginning. And it's that imposter syndrome. I don't believe people who say that they just felt worthy the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
Or if they do, I want to learn from them because it sounds like they have a lot figured out. But for me, it wasn't the success that got me to a place where I felt worthy. Because even that, it was just more ego. And like, I felt like, oh yeah, of course I should be in this room. Or this person didn't put me on their list. Like, well, so I had that period in my life where we were successful and the ego was talking. But that ego is just talking because it's insecure, because it doesn't feel worthy. What I felt really changed my feelings of worthiness was paying more attention to mindfulness and figuring out and connecting with myself on a deeper level. I felt like meditation, things like that, made me realize that of course I was capable, of course I was worthy, more so than success. I think people who don't start looking inward, it doesn't matter how much success they have. Somebody else is always going to be more successful than you.
Sure.
And people are so quickly, everyone will compare themselves to others. Yeah. If they're not able to look inward. And I think most people who do become successful, or a lot of people who do become successful, still struggle with that. And they're just looking at the next pond, right? Of people and being like, oh man, why am I not in that club? And like, well, what can I do to get there? Or, oh, I'm not even worthy to be in there. Or like, so it's just, it's about being able to shine a light on what's inside. And I feel like I've been able to do that more so over the last 3-4 years. Yeah.
Well, and then also letting go of that ego, like you said, because that can really, it can hold us back too from just starting and just trying things and just doing things because you're so worried about how it'll be perceived or about what people will think and that's all ego.
And that ego is just, it puffs up as this big, strong person. It's just a scared little boy.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's just like this scared little kid. And it's just like, what do I need to do to feel less scared or more in control? And the real thing is you don't have to do anything. It's actually, you have to do less. You have to just kind of bring your awareness into yourself instead of trying to get what you're looking for from the world.
Yeah. And needing and expecting from the world instead of just providing it from within.
Yeah. Everything you need is inside.
Yeah. No, I agree. And you mentioned success earlier and what, we were just mentioning that. What would you say is your idea of success? Do you have like finite goals? Do you have more all-encompassing goals or things that you thought success was early on that you've kind of changed your perspective on?
Yeah, I think success used to be this externally referenced thing. Like if I have these external things in my life, I would be successful. Now I think the greatest measure of success is a regulated nervous system.
Okay.
And you'll notice that the people who are the happiest are the ones who can regulate their own nervous systems. And I feel like real wealth is being able to have gratitude, joy, contentment in life, being able to just experience life and be present, because you could have everything in the world. You could have all the greatest things. You could have kids. You could have, an amazing partner. You could have all the money in the world. But if you're not really there, then you're not really experiencing it.
Okay. And so that you'd say it's kind of grown with you in your spirituality. That
I feel more successful because of the way that I am within than what I've achieved, with Live for Live Music or anything like that.
Well, and I'm sure having your son too, it changes your priorities and changes your perception of a lot of things, right?
For me, I feel like having a kid, I feel really grateful that I was able to develop a mindfulness practice before having a kid, because I just feel very present in it. I mean, I'm having a peak life experience right now. Yeah. I know I'm about to have another kid. I know the next 5 years of my life are going to be the years that I always look back on for the rest of my life.
Wow.
After these 5 years, every other year, I'm going to be like, oh, those are the days. So like, even when things are just going terrible, this morning, I'm like trying to pack up like a million different things to get him back to school after winter break. It's just like, and then he laughs, and I'm like just very hyper aware of the fact that this is like a very special moment in time. And I'm sure after those 5 years, I'll find different things to connect with make those years special in their own way. But right now, I've really honed in on I'm having this peak life experience. I want to be present for it. I want to take it all in. So like the joyful parts of that feel really joyful. Like they feel like that feels like real wealth. Like hearing that laugh in the morning, the jokes. My kid is just so silly. He just like wants to be silly. He's just funny. It's just like it's like this. It's hard to describe it other than like a peak life experience.
How do you tap into that? I mean, you hear people talk so much, and I mean, gratitude is obviously a huge part of that. Of you are living the good old days like right now.
Yeah. So
how do you really immerse yourself in that joy for anyone listening?
Well, I have a gratitude practice, which I love. And what I do is I do 5 different things every morning, and we can get into that later. But one of the things that I do before I start my day and start working, after I do the 4 other things usually, is I write down 5 things that I'm grateful for. And my friend Rob taught me this, and I can't repeat those things. So I can't say family, friends, house, whatever. So after day 50, you're running out of things.
You're like, now what am I thankful for?
And so you start to be grateful for, you have to it's almost, you gamify it, and you're like, okay, it's cold out. Well, I'm grateful I have the sweater. I'm grateful. And then I'm like grateful for the way that rocks sound when I'm hiking, and then I'm just finding the smaller things. And the practice isn't the 5 things that I'm writing down. It's retraining your brain to like look for what's right and instead of like trying to point out everything that's wrong and what needs to be fixed around the world around you. You're like, oh, these are the things in my life that are good. And so like it's retraining your brain. And that's had a huge impact on how I kind of experience the world. And I feel like that's been really, really helpful for me.
I like the no repetition. Yeah. That's something I'm gonna
it's really good. Into my practice. That is like it's a game changer. And it's hard.
Creative.
It's hard. It's creative. And then you realize like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be grateful for all of it.
Yeah.
You know, like that's what it is. But you have to find the smallest things. And I can be having a bad day and I just, okay, like let me go through the 5 things and I'll be like driving and I'm like having a rough day. And then all of a sudden, like my nervous system completely shifts and like my brain shifts and you just, that feeling of overwhelm starts to go away. So the gratitude practice and my meditation practice both keep me very grounded in now.
Okay. And just kind of rewires your brain to notice all of those things and actually be grateful for them versus just letting them kind of passively exist.
Yeah.
Which I think is the most important thing.
And it still happens, you know, it still happens a lot.
It's a muscle.
But then there's times where I'm like, I'm slightly annoyed by something my kid is doing or like kind of checked out. And then all of a sudden I like have a light bulb. I'm like, what am I doing? Let me get in this. Let me put the phone away or put the laptop away. And like, let me stop working here. Cause me and my wife work from home for the first 6 months.
Okay.
We didn't have a nanny. We just worked and like switched off working while one person's watching the baby. And then we just work late into the night. So there were points where I felt like we weren't able to be as present, but when we were present, we were both very present. So it was, you have little reminders in life of like when, like you start to notice like, oh, I'm not really fully here.
Okay.
Like, I'm a little disconnected. How do I connect?
Okay.
How do I connect?
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm taking mental notes on this. I wish I had a notepad. I love this. This is great, especially as someone that's trying to step into my spirituality more. And what led you on this whole journey? Like, how did you start? Because I know this is a huge part of your life now. You're now coaching other people on meditation, and that takes a while because you got to learn first yourself. So.
Yeah, so 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with a bone disease. It's called avascular necrosis.
Okay.
It affects your ball and socket joints. So essentially, the ball and socket joints, like your shoulders, your hips, your knees, they start to die. And so they need to be replaced. So like you're basically losing bone faster than you're regrowing it.
Okay.
So at the time, 6 years ago, it was already way too late for my left hip. And I needed to have that left hip replaced. So
did you have symptoms? Were you in pain?
I was just in pain. You know, I'm not saying like all chiropractors are like this, but like I would go show chiropractors and be like, oh, it's because your head is tilted this way or whatever. And like I showed it to one doctor. It was like, oh no, there's something seriously wrong here. And so I'm not sure, and I still am not sure what caused this disease, but I'm sure my habits at the time. I was partying a lot. I was doing drugs. I was drinking a lot. I'm sure that I was smoking. I'm sure a lot of that contributed. But at first I was really angry. I was very anxious. I was really frustrated by my situation, pissed off. And I realized that I needed to make some changes in my life. So kind of at the same time, I cleaned up my diet. I got sober, started like exercising a little bit. And I started tapping into different forms of mindfulness, like tapping, breathing, different types of meditation, just whatever I can do. And I found that the mindfulness practices, they're the ones that like really let you connect with yourself so that you actually know what changes you need to make: diet, health, exercise.
Okay.
Make those changes. And then actually the mindfulness is what actually helps you sustain them, because you actually become aware of what makes you feel good.
And what you need, and intuitive eating and working out and all of those things.
And so you start to like notice not only what you need, but like what you don't need, what doesn't feel real or authentic or good for you. And so I tried a bunch of different types of meditation practices over the years, did all the apps, the Headspaces, the Calm. And then I signed up for two different ones of my friends, my friend Jeremy and my friend Kendall. Jeremy plays in a band called Big Gigantic.
Oh,
and my friend Kendall started a company called Backline with my friend Hillary.
Okay.
And they are like a music industry resource for mental health in the music industry.
Oh.
And so and Kendall used to work for me. So she knew at the time that, my mental health to
You were
start
going through it. Yeah. She's like, you need this, seriously.
Yeah. So she recommended this meditation course.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took this 3-day meditation course and it changed my life. It was like, I felt like it was a really different and really impactful style of meditation.
Okay. What was so different about it?
I felt like instead of trying to resist thoughts, it was accepting of having thoughts. It was accepting of having feelings, but it gave you something to anchor back into at the same time.
Gotcha.
And after a while, you get to start experiencing the being part of human being.
Okay.
We're not like human doings. You're not just the podcaster. You're not just the, I'm not just the Live for Live music guy. We identify with all the things that we're doing. And at the end of the day, we don't identify with the being part of human being. So
that is a mic drop. Wow.
So it's actually called the One Giant Mind Being technique. And it's very similar to transcendental meditation, which, a lot of people know from like the Maharishi, which a lot of the Beatles do. And like, a lot of the TM is like huge. And so it's a transcendental style meditation, but it's more functional than spiritual.
Okay.
And I feel like a lot of aspects of TM are spiritual in nature, and they have a lot of Hinduism aspects to it. Mm-hmm. This was, more functional and kind of teaching you how to become more aware of your being, your own sense of who you are and what you really want from this world. The who of you, so to speak.
Wow. Does this course still exist?
So this course, my friend Emily still teaches this course. Now I also teach this course.
I think I'm gonna have to take your course. Is what I'm getting from this.
So so I just did this type of meditation for 4 years, and nothing in my life had been more impactful. The working out, the eating healthy, all that stuff was great, but I felt like it really was fueled by my meditation practice.
Yeah, and your mindfulness.
And it changed the way that I was in day-to-day life. I was responsive instead of reactive. Okay. I was just more joyful, more content. I was sleeping better. I really just had a sense of who I was, and I felt more connected to everything, more present, more grounded. And I found that it was like one of the most important things that I did in my life. And I was only doing it once a day. I recently, the last few years, I started doing it twice a day, and I found it to be crazy, crazy impactful. I know Jerry Seinfeld, I actually watched a clip of his, and he does transcendental meditation.
Okay.
And he was like, they didn't tell me about the second meditation. If I knew about the second meditation, Seinfeld would still be going on today, because it's just been such a big impact.
Transformative experience.
Yeah, because that second meditation gets like in the morning, you're already at this de-excited state. And it kind of helps you like live in that a little bit. And then throughout the day, you get excited, and then it goes back down. And then to be able to teach your brain to go from that excited state in the middle of the day to also back down, it's only 20 minutes once or twice a day. And I found profound benefits from just doing it once a day as well. Uh-huh. But now that I'm doing it twice a day, I'm just like, I feel like no matter what's happening on the outside, I feel very much in control of how I feel on the inside.
And is this like in the middle of the day that you're doing this, at night? Like what time of day is
first thing in the morning, I wake up and I meditate.
Okay. And is this a seated situation?
Yeah, seated situation. Okay. But comfortable, I once read a book called like The Book of Joy, where like this guy who's a journalist is like interviewing the Dalai Lama, and he was so relieved that like they were doing a meditation together to see like the Dalai Lama, like, like scratching an itch or like getting comfortable. Like a lot of people are trying to do these meditations where they're like really rigid and like trying to do these mudras, which are like hand motions, which like aren't meant for people who aren't trying to live in a monastery. These are things that like hit different energy points that are like, that take you out of this world.
Okay.
And the type of meditation that I teach it's for householders. It's for people who want to just be more connected with the world that they're living in. It's not for people who are trying to retreat and just like go live somewhere and, live in the forest and spend their time under a tree. So this is meant for people who really want to integrate it into their day-to-day lives.
Okay.
So I found meditation to be really, really amazing. Over the summer from like May 1st, I got done with Jazz Fest.
Okay.
I had signed up for this meditation teaching course. I had hit up my teacher and asked her, hey, how do I learn this? Or how do I learn how to teach this? And she connected with me. So I did a 4-month course. And then I went to India and I studied under the same person who taught the course.
Wow.
Just to deepen my own practice and kind of connect with my roots in a way that I kind of pushed away for a long time. I had some healing there. And that was more of a VM, which is like Vedic meditation, which is the same as TM.
Okay.
But that for me felt a little bit more spiritual, but the meditation that I teach is functional, not spiritual.
Okay.
But you get to the same place.
And what's the difference between functional and spiritual?
Spiritual just has a lot of historical, traditional rituals and rites to it as well. Like there's this thing called a puja that you do to be like kind of initiated into, TM or VM, which is a set of mantras and Sanskrit prayers and stuff like that. And that's not what I teach. No.
Okay.
But for me to get from where I'm at to being even okay with any spirituality, it took me a while, and I did this trip to India, and that was really healing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to experience that. And I think that I want to teach One Giant Mind Being technique because I feel like it is so much more accessible for everybody.
Uh-huh.
And it is just as impactful. So
and it's something that probably most people can relate to.
Exactly. So I learned how to teach it, and then I went to India just to I felt like I just needed more creds, maybe
Sure.
some imposter syndrome crept in, and I just felt like, what are people going to think when who have like this other business that I'm known for, get up and start teaching meditation? What they're going to think that I'm crazy, so let me go to India. I'll get my bona fides,
prove myself a little bit.
I end up going to India, and I actually never ended up sharing anything from my trip with anybody on social media or anyone really. I've only talked about it with my wife. I found the experience to be deeply personal, and I had like 10-hour meditation days and
wow. Were they guided or just on your own?
This is and what the type of meditation I teach is it teaches you how to be able to meditate anywhere, any place. So you wake up, you meditate. You wake up, you're on a plane, you can meditate. I'm always meditating where there's tons of sound. You hear baby crying, you hear this going on, you hear, music playing sometimes downstairs, or there's just a million things going on in life, and you're not really trying to make the world around you quiet. You're trying to make it quiet inside. So it shouldn't impact, noise is not a barrier to meditation, nor should it be.
What a tool.
Yeah. So I'll do it in a green room. I'll do it in various different places.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned how to teach. And then I launched my first course. I'm teaching my first class tonight.
Mm-hmm.
That it's going to be really fun. Sold out. And I'll probably, my wife's about to have a kid. So probably be a few months till I launch another one.
Okay.
But I'll still do privates and stuff like that. And I just feel like for me right now, each one of those virtual events felt like this is my purpose.
Okay.
And right now, this feels like, along with Live for Live, it feels like this is my purpose. This is how I can make the biggest impact on the world, because every person you teach to meditate, it's like a butterfly effect. The way that they experience the world becomes so different, and the way that they interact with others in the world becomes so different that you're not just teaching that person to meditate, you're changing how that person interacts with every single person in the world that they interact with. So you're basically changing, the lives of hundreds and hundreds. And
such a ripple.
Yeah. So I felt like for me, that feels like something that I want to do for the rest of my life, is teach meditation.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching this documentary called The Blue Zones, and they go to different blue zones, which are areas where people live the longest. And one of them was Okinawa, Japan. And the Okinawans have a thing called ikigai. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but it's find something that you love, that you're good at, and that you can get paid for, and you do that, and that's your purpose in life. And doesn't have to be your full-time job or whatever. You could still have a job, but these people who are living to their hundreds, you'll see one guy who's 90 who's still teaching a type of martial arts, or another lady who does singing with her friends or builds that wouldn't count. So it would be somebody else who's carving wood statues, and he's 95.
Wow.
So it's you find something that you can do that's helpful, that's productive, that you can get paid for, and you feel has an impact, and that seems to have such a strong impact on people internally that it actually makes them live longer.
Wow. Huh. Yeah, I mean, it's just finding that passion, which I think as Americans, we view that success the opposite way of like making the most money, which sometimes is totally fine. I mean, I tell people all the time, I don't think entrepreneurship is for everyone, but I think as long as you have those things that you love in your life and you don't hate your job and dread your job, then, you know, it's okay to just have a 9-to-5 that allows you to do whatever it is that you're passionate about. But I like that. That's so interesting that it affects the longevity of your life.
Yeah, like have a 9-to-5, but then spend 5 to 7 doing something that like you really want to do, you know? My trainer, who I think my trainer feels like the same way about both the way he trains and what he does, but like he trains and then afterwards he does a ton of woodworking, you know, like, so he's doing like, and that you could tell is the thing that really is, you know, hitting his soul and hitting him internally. You know? Okay.
And does your wife practice all of this as well?
So my wife actually ended up taking the course a few years after I did. She just saw the impact and really wanted to incorporate it. So she started right before she had our first kid. And so there's like pictures of her in the delivery room, just like meditating. And I feel like it's made her a better mom. It's made me a better dad. It's made me a better husband. Just being able to not react and being able to respond to moments. When you have a kid, the baby, talk about a dysregulated nervous system. That baby does not have any idea how to regulate their nervous system. So their nervous system's going all over the place. And they learn from you. So they learn how to regulate from the parent. So there's nothing that a parent could do more for their kid than learn how to regulate their own nervous system. It teaches the kid how to have a regulated nervous system. And also for your own well-being, like when you're in the presence of something that's so dysregulated, it can do a number on your own nervous system.
And it affects you.
And it'll take you for a ride and it'll take you for a spin and your thoughts will go crazy. And learning to be able to go from that excited to de-excited state. And when you do it in meditation, your brain learns how to map it. Whereas, you know, you take psychedelics or you take drugs to get to these heightened states of awareness. And not to say that sometimes those psychedelics and whatever can not be used as medicine or have their own purpose. And I know I've, you know, tried my fair share.
Yeah.
But what I've found is that meditation, your brain knows how it got there and knows how to get back. What happens when you take psychedelics is your brain goes to this either heightened or just completely different state of awareness. And then all of a sudden the next day, it's like, how did I get there? Like what happened? It's like test driving a Ferrari, you know, like I want to learn.
Like, whoa. And
like, it's fun and whatever. And like the alternative is a lot harder. Like to learn how to make enough money to buy the Ferrari is like a lot harder.
Wow.
And it's a lot more work, but it is a lot more rewarding because you get to own that car, you know, and you get to live in that car. You get to experience that on a day-to-day basis and not just when you're in, you know, taking a different substance or another.
Interesting. I like the Ferrari example. I've taken a few psychedelics myself and I can relate 100%. And you mentioned earlier, you've got a pretty substantial morning routine or way you like to start your day. Well, what does that look like?
So these used to be my non-negotiables. And then you have a kid and you realize that everything in life is negotiable.
Except for your kid.
Yeah. And I actually think that like for a while, because I never had a schedule. I never had a routine. I was just never like disciplined in that manner. So for a few years, I had to just like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I do on this day. This is the type of workout I do on Tuesdays. This is the type of workout I do on Wednesdays, Thursdays. And then my rest day, I do yoga. And then just like repeat. And then I do. So like I was a lot more rigid in my non-negotiables.
This is before your son, right?
Before my son.
Okay.
Yeah. But now I'm trying to be more flexible. And because I know what I need to do to feel good. And the 5 things that make me feel the best in a day are I wake up and I meditate. Second thing is I exercise. Then I do either a cold plunge or a cold shower.
Okay.
And then I get about 5 minutes of sunlight in my eyes.
Okay.
If you like come to our house around sunrise, you'll see me and my wife like in jackets, like staring at the sun. She's drinking her coffee. Like the neighbors must think we're nuts.
Yeah.
So
do you have a cold plunge at your house?
We live in Colorado.
Oh yes.
We live in Denver. So the water, I have a thermometer that I throw in the bathtub. And so in the summer it gets up to like 60, but in the winter, right now it's at like 41.
Wow.
So I have like a jacuzzi bathtub that I just fill up. And and then I drain and it gets down to 41 and it's like that you don't need to go any colder than that. That's a cold plunge. Yeah. You know? So it's like we're very lucky in that regard. So it's meditation, exercise, cold, sunlight, and then the fifth thing is the gratitude practice. And I feel like when I miss the gratitude practice, even on weekends, sometimes I miss the gratitude practice on weekends, and I find that I don't have to, but it helps. I'm like, something feels off today. And then I just run through it because weekends are tough for me to like, what I write down my gratitude practice is in the same notebook that I write down my to-do list before I start the day. So first I journal for like a paragraph, write down what I'm grateful for. And then I write down my to-do list and I do my work day. So if I'm not doing work that day, it's a little bit harder for me to get there.
Yeah.
So I'll run through it in my head. Like when I'm driving, when I realize, and it always happens every weekend, at some point I realize, hey, something's off. And then I just have to cycle through. And honestly, with a kid, it feels like I'm cheating. I have the cheat code to gratitude right now because like he does 5 things in a morning that I'm like, oh, well, I'm grateful he did that. I'm grateful he did that. I'm grateful he did that. Like these were all like peak fun times in my life. I'm like, how can I not be grateful for that?
Yeah.
And just remembering to be grateful for that instead of like just having that experience and then all of a sudden just thinking about the next 2 minutes where the kid is like hysterical crying about this other thing, but not really acknowledging that good part is what I think a lot of people find makes parenting more of a struggle is when you don't really acknowledge and put the emphasis and internalize the joy of like those 5 good minutes or those 5 good things that happened. And you're really just focused on the next, hour of like tantrums and sicknesses and just things that happen with toddlers and kids.
Wow. And just choosing what to acknowledge, really. Yeah. I had a friend on yesterday who's a new mom, and she was saying, the night before her newborn son, like, wasn't sleeping at all. And like, she got no sleep. She's like, I could have let that ruin my entire day, but I chose to make today a new day. That was yesterday, and that's okay. And today's a new day. Tonight's going to be a new night. And so I think with parenthood too, it sounds like from talking to so many of my friends that are new parents, a lot of that is your mindset, because you can go into it thinking, of course, everyone has different circumstances, but that it's going to be like the worst, hardest thing in the world or this like life altering thing. And of course it is, but it can be a positive.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I feel like 8 hours of sleep is like used to be a non-negotiable thing on non-show days. And it's not always possible. And I used to like, track my sleep and do all of these things. And now I'm learning to like, okay, now that you've created a system around what you need to do to make sure you get those 8 hours of sleep, now you need to create a system around how do you deal with not getting 8 hours of sleep? How do you be okay with, okay, well, today I'm just going to have a little bit less. Be a little bit more aware that, okay, maybe my internal resources are going to be a little depleted. So let me be aware of that. So when something happens that causes or triggers something in my body, like, oh, my internal resources are a little bit depleted. I'm not going to react to this as well as I should. Let me take an extra minute, or just even noticing that and realizing why you might be a little bit more hypersensitive to things or a little bit more triggered by things. I feel like that will make a big difference in how you react as well.
And was that something you were trying to anticipate before your son, and like you were trying to be like, okay, let me be okay with this, or was this a realization?
No, this happened because all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, why am I not okay? Like, I'm not getting my 8 hours of sleep.
You're non-negotiable.
I'm not able to do all of these things that were like non-negotiable. But now you got to negotiate, and I'm learning, and I'm in the beginning process of I got really good at okay, I'm going to nail down exactly what I need to do to feel good. On Mondays, I do strength, or Mondays I do cardio, Tuesdays I do strength, Wednesdays I do yoga, like have like a set routine, whatever. But now it's like, okay, if I don't get this in, I'll make it up on the other end. I know that I will get to something. And so I'm like I'm trying not to be as like, it doesn't have to go exactly the way things were planned.
Okay. And that's probably a lesson that your son brought you.
Yeah.
Which is cool, because it's a great lesson for life.
And like my wife, yes, we eat healthy at home and we eat very well at home, but like, hey, you have to also be able to have like an enjoyable meal at a nice restaurant without thinking like, oh man, this is going to mess me up for my goals on X, Y, and Z day.
Yeah.
Or, oh, I'm not supposed to be eating this and that. Like, so just learning to like relax into it as well. Because I think the way that you are internally, if you're letting those things stress you out and make you upset, it's having the opposite effect of what you're trying to do with having all of these routines and all of these things. So like, if I'm letting being so rigid about food impact me internally, then all of a sudden that is hurting my health more than the food that I'm eating. So there's a huge, like, I'm really into the longevity space, and I love like the stuff that happens in there. And like one of the biggest takeaways I've noticed from like these like really just geeky, nerdy scientists who are like trying to find exactly the right, supplement stack and this and that, and to like live a long time. And all of them are like, 30-40% of it is your emotional state. Like the people who live the longest are the ones that seem to have a social life and are seeing people X amount of days, because they're still scientists. So they want to like, all right, they're seeing like 10 people every 3 days. And like that impacts, but like there is a huge internal emotional component to health and well-being. And I feel like people are just so focused on like, and me too, I've been in this stage where I'm just so focused on like, okay, I need to do this, and then I need to do this, and then I need to do this. And these are all the things that I need to do to feel healthy. And then I'm like, and then I'm realizing I'm like getting myself all rigid about these things that it's actually negatively impacting my health. So you build the structure and then you learn how to balance.
Yeah, I think because I love routine so much, I think that's something that I need to find more of, because I do travel so much, and I need to, it's what I'm working on is within the chaos is finding, I guess, like stillness and calm in where I'm like not getting to sleep in my bed. I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm like not setting my alarm at 5:30 like I like, or whatever that looks like, is finding a routine within other pieces, I guess. Yeah. If that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. And like this morning I was like, okay, so I'll have a window. And I realized this morning, like I woke up at 5:30 and I was like, okay, I have a window. I can go run. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do all these things, but it wasn't like exactly in line with what the order was. And I felt like, this is great. Like this is a great way to start the day. And I'm glad that it worked out this way. But I think a lot of people do need the structure in the beginning, but it's just important to remind yourself that that's just the beginning. Then for me, the hard days are my rest days. Like, cause I'm just like, in terms of exercise, I'm just so used to like feeling like I accomplished something. So
moving
like
your body.
Yeah. So it's hard for me to like do yoga and stretch that day instead of feeling like I've, accomplished something. And that's something that I'm starting to learn how to be, better at, just sitting and taking the rest that I need and what my body needs, and how that is also something that is benefiting my health.
Well, and it's coming back to that intuition and that mindfulness too. Like, for example, if you're so rigid on Monday, I do cardio, but maybe you're feeling soreness or something. Yeah. Exactly. Understanding that, okay, maybe today can be my stretch day then, and that being okay. But I feel like that's a learning process.
Yeah, for me, it was a learning process. And now I feel like I'm like, okay, what feels good today? What can I do today? Whereas I was very rigid for a while.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm getting better health and outcomes by just being a little bit more flexible. Still, still on it, still like slightly obsessive about it.
Yeah.
But a little bit more flexible. My wife is so much more in tune with her like body and her own awareness. And like she started meditating like 3 years after me, and she sits like the Buddha, like she's just like, she's in it, because I'm a very like thought-filled, flighty, like, prior to meditation, a very anxious person. So like I actually needed the meditation more, but she's very in tune with her body, her mind. And she was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do today. Like, okay, I'm going to run today. Okay, I'm going to do upper body today. My legs are sore. I'm going to do this. And she's like very good at just figuring out what her body needs. And we like did these physicals one time. And, the doctor was like, I haven't seen a specimen like this before about her. And she's doing it right. And I'm like putting in like, extra time. And they're like, nope, this is the right way.
That's a gift, because I struggle with that obsessiveness and the rigidness sometimes. And then it's as simple as just reminding myself, like, you literally made up these rules. Like, who cares? Because it's starting your own business. And as an entrepreneur, you have to make up some kind of rule, some system to get things done because no one's telling you to do anything. And sometimes that bleeds into my life. And I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I putting all this pressure on myself? It's just me making this up.
Like, same goes for like kids too. Like, you want to get them in a routine. And then you want to break their routine every once in a while.
To make sure that they're like capable
of like doing other things.
Interesting.
Okay, this is when we eat dinner. Okay, tomorrow we're going to go out to a restaurant.
Yeah.
Like, this is when we go to bed every night. This is when, you take a nap. But then we're going to get on a plane and go on a trip to this, whatever. And it's kind of like, he'll nap in the car. Like figure out when it happens. And there's my dad is really good at this. He's mindful in his own way. And very flexible to be able to move with whatever's happening outside of him. They say there's like two types of people in the world: thermostat people and thermometer people. Thermometer goes up and down based on the environment around them.
Okay.
And a thermostat person is like, you set the tone, you set the temperature, you set the mood. And so whatever's happening around, you're the one setting the environment. And thermometer people are like, oh, they're so externally referenced. They're just like, okay, this is happening around me, so I feel like this. This is happening around me, so I feel like this.
Reactive.
And it's just like they are whatever the conditions are on the outside. And if it doesn't meet their very specific preferences, then they're not okay.
Interesting.
And so it's like you have to learn how to be okay with whatever your current situation is. And then it's been a learning curve for me, and I'm just in the beginning of that journey of getting to be more flexible. But I also am very understanding that I needed the rigidity to get me to be flexible, if that makes sense.
It's funny, I relate to that. Like last year, something that I was really focusing on in therapy was remembering to play, like remembering to like allow myself to read or to paint or to be creative just for the sake of it versus, when I'm so creative for my job, in my mind, I'm like, you got to monetize everything. Everything has to be like, a certain way. And to help me do that, because I'm such a list person, she was like, okay, well, why don't you write in your planner? Because I'm a big to-do list person as well, like planner person. Write in the top corner, like 5 options for yourself, where when it hits a certain time or when you finish your to-do list, then you have a list that you can refer to of like, these are the things that you find joyful and fun and childlike. So like pick one of these things. And that helped me tenfold, because sometimes when I would finish something, if I don't have something to look at to show me like these are the things that you enjoy, my brain, I'm so ADD and so all over the place all the time, I would just forget. And so I would start doing something else, maybe work related, because you can always do more with work when you own your own company. And
just start popping up the emails on a Saturday night. Like, why am I looking at this?
No, it's like a muscle. You're like, wait, how did I get here? Why did I open this? And then you notice that like anxiety or some kind of feeling in yourself. And you're like, whoa, like how did we get here? And so I relate to that rigidity. I kind of need that too, to step into something like that, because it helps me kind of like rationalize with it in my mind, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And it sounds like we're similar in that way. So is that something moving forward, when you're thinking about the next year, in the near future, like things that you're working on?
Yeah. I mean, I'm about to have another kid. So it's just another reminder that I can't control what's going on the outside. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure that like, okay, I'm going to meditate every morning. That I can do.
Okay.
I'm going to almost 100%, 99% of the time, I'm going to be able to meditate in the afternoon too. I'm not going to be able to go to the gym for an hour. I can do a workout in the garage for like 20, 30 minutes when I need to.
Okay.
If I get the luxury of going for an hour, I'll go for an hour. It's going to be, few and far between, but I'm still going to do something. I'm going to move my body, but not the way that I planned.
Sure.
Not like the exact muscle groups I'm working on, not like the, zone 2 exercise. I do a type of exercise that's like zone 2, which is like the minimum effective dose, they say, is like 45 minutes to an hour. So like maybe I'm not
maybe you don't hit that.
Yeah, maybe I don't get my zone 2. It's like a very steady like cardio exercise at a low heart rate. So maybe I don't get to do my zone 2 as much, or maybe I get to do that once a week or once every 2-3 weeks. I don't get to do a cold plunge, but I'll do a cold shower.
Okay.
Gratitude. Maybe I don't get time to write it down. I think I will get a time to write it down, especially on work days, because I won't start my work day without doing it. But I'm going to cycle through all the things in my head.
No matter what.
No matter what. So it's just like finding the adjustments that you need. And then, the day that I actually do have that time, I'm going to be sad that my kids aren't in the house.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned before, like I'm very hyper aware of that stuff. I know that what's hard about being a parent are the things that I'm going to miss, and like, even though that there are a lot of points being a dad, I feel, and I'm a very involved parent, it's tough and it can be and I don't have 2 kids yet and I will soon. So maybe this will all just go out the window, but like I'm able to realize when something is happening that I'm like, oh, he's having a crazy tantrum. What are we going to do? Or we were just potty training. Like, oh my God, he's never going to figure this out. He's never going to get it. That it's still, this is still the best time of my life.
Yeah.
And I need to, this is just a small like problem in the grand scheme of it all being like this amazing, giant, beautiful experience. And I kind of treat like my problems in life as that as well. Like recently I just was dealing with some stuff over Christmas break that was a big work issue. And I was like, I'm not going to let this problem consume how I am in life. Like I'm not going to let this make me anxious. I'm not going to let this, destroy my mood. I'm going to compartmentalize and be like, this is a problem that I'm having. And then this is the rest of my life. And the gratitude practice kind of like helps you realize what's going on in the rest of your life. Wow. And so all of a sudden you're just like, oh, this is a good life. And I'm dealing with some problems, and those problems are going to change. They're not going to go away. Throughout the rest of your life, from now until the day you die, you're going to have problems.
Yeah.
And they might get a little bit bigger or smaller, but they'll probably roughly be around the same size. And you're just going to have to deal with them. But if you look at the big picture, it's like, it's still this beautiful, amazing life. So like, just remember that you're going to have a certain set of problems. You're going to have to be dealing with a certain set of problems. But at the end of the day, your life is, what you make of it on the inside.
Well, and it sounds like the gratitude helps you kind of zoom out.
Yeah.
And see all that.
Yeah, it's like almost simultaneously zooming out and then being in.
Getting back into it,
It's like you get to look at the forest and the trees in that way.
Wow. So for anyone listening that wants to try any of this, wants to implement any of this into their life, especially I feel like around January, everyone's trying to, do new things with themselves and better themselves. Do you have any advice for anyone wanting to dip their toes in on where to start?
I have a website. It's meditatewithkunj.com.
Okay.
I'm sure you'll be able to like post a link of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll put that in the show notes for sure.
So, and you could sign up for my wait list for the next course.
Okay.
Or you could reach out to me directly if you have any questions about meditation, if anyone has any questions, I'm always down to talk about it. It's something that I love to, I when I announced that I was teaching meditation, I got calls from all over the music industry of just like different people I never would have expected to be like just wanting to talk about their own practice. Mm-hmm. And I always find it super interesting, and I'm always down to talk about it. So you can find me on my website. You could reach out to me on social media, and my social media buttons are on my website as well. So you can find me on Instagram or whatever and send me a message about meditation, or sign up for my course, or sign up for a private course. And I'm down to talk about all of it.
Okay. I love it. So your DMs are wide open.
Yeah.
I always say that to everyone as well. And so we have your website, and then what were your social handles? So everyone can find you?
thekunjshah.com.
Okay.
And Kunj Shah 87 for X. It's X now, right?
Oh, yeah. For Twitter. Yeah.
I barely use it, but
I don't really
I'm trying
use it either.
to use it more. So, and right now I'm mostly focused. There'll be some music content on there, but I'm mostly focused on the stuff that I'm putting out on socials is more of the meditation stuff that I'm into right now.
Okay. Well, and I like that. It sounds like your purpose has transformed,
Mm-hmm.
since where you started, which I think is a very natural thing that is great to lean into. But it also sounds like, you talked about the butterfly effect and the ripple effect of teaching these practices and meditation and how you react to other people. I feel like music can also have that butterfly effect through people, which is cool.
And that's what I love about it. At the end of the day, I love making people happy. I love seeing people just like connect with each other in a happy space and a safe space and a place where they feel like they're able to experience joy and dance and, build community with one another. And I think that's just one of the most important things in life is like building that community and being able to interact with other people. So I found that to be a really awesome perk of what I do is being able to just witness all of this stuff happening in real time.
Wow. I mean, yeah, it sounds like that's your purpose. You're living in alignment. You'll live forever.
I hope so.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
This was so much fun and such a cool conversation. I'll be listening back to this episode so I can take some notes myself. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much
Bye.
for listening. Bye. All right, and that is a wrap on this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. It was so much fun getting to know Kunj and hearing his story. You can follow him on all of the things, follow up about his courses. You can find his website in our show notes. You can find us at Raw Intentions Podcast on Instagram. Give us a follow. We drop new episodes every single Thursday, anywhere you get your podcasts, including YouTube, which we are now streaming on. So exciting. If you like what you heard, please leave us a little like, rating, and review. We love hearing from you guys, as well as it helps us grow as we continue to spread our community. You heard Kunj, and I feel the same way. You can always slide into our DMs and chat about anything that you heard on the podcast. We're always here to help and to chat. And if you want to DM me about something that you heard, something that you would like to hear on a future episode, someone that you think I should have on and have conversations with, I'm always receptive. I love to hear from you guys. But that's all I have for y'all this week. Thank you so much for listening. I love you all. Have a fabulous weekend, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.